Good morning and welcome to Arts to Tryon Studio. My name's Ellie Tryon Elgin, and this is part 2 of Drawing Basics. It's going to be a short mini lesson that you can use to further improve your drawing skills. Last week I talked about how to draw lines, so I'm going to do a small review. Last week we talked about how to draw the lines, how to learn to control the medium, and to draw some very basic shapes. The square, the triangle, and the circle, and how we can combine them to make other shapes. But right now what we're going to do is do the next step, which is making the square into a cube, the triangle into a pyramid, circle into an orb, and they will become the additions to the exercises of drawing the straight lines, drawing the basic shapes, and now making them three-dimensional, which means also learning about a value scale. So as a small review, drawing the straight lines, you do remember the pull, to pull your lines going straight across. Don't worry about trying to make them straight. Nobody draws absolutely straight lines without a ruler or some instrument to make sure that the lines are plumb. What you're trying to do is learn how to control the medium so it's light as you draw there across it and down. And then the basic shapes, which we're going to do right now, is the square, the triangle, and the circle. And these are all from straight lines, diagonal lines, and of course the arcs. Those are those those drawing tools that I've given you last week. So you have to keep redoing them over and over until you understand them. Now the thing is, how do you make a square into a cube? Well, it's really quite easy. You start drawing. The first is you draw your first square down, and then right above it or below it, it doesn't matter which way. I'm going to go above at about the halfway mark. Right here, I'm going to draw that, and halfway down there. And so it's just going to be, and then that way I can do that, and that. I have now actually I'm going to make that a little more, there we go. Just by pulling this way and this way, pulling down there's this way and this way, I now have a cube. The same thing with the triangle. I can make the two diagonal lines this way, making it into a pyramid. I just draw a line right down the middle, make it a little bit longer, and then draw to that, and I have a pyramid. When we get to the orb, this is where the value scale will come really in handy, because a circle drawn this way just looks like a circle. So we're just going to learn a little bit about the value scale in order to learn how to do this. In the value scale, this is where this compressed charcoal comes in handy. I'm going to use a smaller piece here. If we have light coming from this direction, and we're going to use that as our direct light type thing, means that the light's going to hit mostly on the top here, and this here in the front will be just very light. This is something you're going to have to practice doing. Again, light here in the front, just a little bit of a light shadow. Here on the side, I'm going to press a little harder And I'm going to go over it a couple more times, just pulling them, and that will give me a three-dimensional shape for my my cube. Same thing with the pyramid. We're going to start with just the pyramid. The light's going to hit this side. So on this side will be the dark side. So I'm going to pull from here, pull it down, and I'm going to make sure it's nice and dark over there. Now, we can also talk about cast shadows, and that'll help. Now, with the orb, you're going to draw your circle using your arc lines, and you're going to try to get it as much looking like a circle as you possibly can. And again, the light's going to come from this direction, again with my compressed charcoal. And so that I know that the light's going to be, so I'm going to just go right around very lightly at first. As I get to the other side, I can start putting a little bit more darkness. Now, the nice thing about this is there with just drift it right on out where the light is coming in from. And there is my orb. It looks like an orb that way. And then you have shadows. So how can you practice doing it? Well, first off, take your compressed charcoal and just start out doing it very lightly. Make like so. Just pulling it down. And then going back, leave yourself a little space there where you started and do another across. And then again, and each time you do this, you'll see that, and you're going to use the same and see how it can get very dark toward the end. So we can start out here very light. Do it across for as much as you can. Try to get 10 value scales. This is a value scale. You're going to have to practice the value scale a couple times to get it right. And then you can go back and say, well, since the light is hitting here, then my shadow is going to be here on my, and this area can be a little darker right at the edge. And then you can bring it out very lightly and let it drift off. And it'll look like it's casting a shadow. The same thing with the pyramid. You can do that. Right along the edge, you can make it a little darker. And then with your, just let it drift out. Drift away. Let me bring this orb down here. Yeah, pull. Make my orb down here. Show you there's a neat thing about orbs to make it even look more like an orb after you get your circle drawn. That's a little side too dark, so you can use just kind of bring it off a little bit. Okay, there we go. You've got here the shadow, and you can drift it out to where the light's hitting it. And getting a little darker behind here. But then you have to understand how an orb, the shadow would cast. So right down, coming straight down here to the edge. This would be the darkest part where the orb is sitting on something. And you would drift it out here very lightly, and then over here a little darker, but then drift it out. So you can literally make it look like it's sitting on a surface. These are, as soon as you put a dark line right at the end of, at the edge of a thing, and then drift the shadow out, you can give it a sense of sitting on a surface. And that's what you want to do. You want things to look like they're sitting on a surface. And so that's this is your basic, exercise for this week is 5 minutes with your pulling lines and your arcs. Do that for about 5 minutes. It's very easy to do. 5 minutes with the very basic shapes of the square, the rectangle, and the circle, then making them into a cube, a pyramid, and then an orb. And then you move into making your value scales. You do each one of them for about 5 minutes. I'm not asking you to do them for a long period of time, because what I want you to do is try to get them into your head. And this is the best way to do it. It's a repetition. It's practice. If you don't do it perfect the first time out, do not worry about that. That's not the issue. Artists make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes. This is what you're going to do, is you're going to learn from your mistakes. So if you make a mistake, say, I'm going to keep that. I'm going to learn from it. You should do about 5 of these so that you can practice doing them, and then making your shadows, your cast shadows, as much as possible. This week I'm going to ask you also to not only look around your thing, but look at other things. Look at a lot of things, and then draw a few of these objects, such as you can do a vase, a teapot, any pot. Put a pot up. Draw the pot best you can. Next week I will also talk about perspective, and so that you can learn how to get things moving back in space. So we will be doing that next week, about perspective, and we will be adding things on to each week so that you learn things in increments rather than trying to learn everything at one time. I'm a firm believer, if I teach you 1 or 2 things each week and that you practice from it. I use a series of 3s, as you can see. So if you can remember how to do these things, each week you'll be adding something different onto it. You will be understanding it a little bit better. And that's the important part about drawing and how to improve your drawing skills. So I'm going to end here. Again, check my Facebook page out. If you are on Instagram, I'm going to post this video on Instagram. I'm going to post it on my Facebook page. I'm going to be posting it on YouTube. Actually, I post it on YouTube first and then put it onto the other sites because it's just easier to do for me that way. Please subscribe to my YouTube page, and if you really would like to help me out a little bit, as I'm trying to help all of you out, I would really appreciate if you would check out my Patreon page, and that's www.patreon.com/Arts to Try On Studio. So I'm hoping you'll check that out, become a subscriber on that, and it definitely will be a great deal of help to me. So I thank you very much, and I will see you next week.